People's Democratic Party in Ogun State and its governorship candidate, Ladi Adebutu, on Monday vowed to explore all legal means available to challenge the victory of Governor Dakpo Abiodun. The party accused the police and military of providing viral cover for gun-wielding criminals to disrupt and burn ballot boxes in over 100 polling units across the state, in their own words, during the Saturday's election. The chairman of the party, Sikirulai Ogundele, while addressing stakeholders of the party during the post-election meeting in Abeokuta, said the governorship election in Ogun State is a rape on democracy. Ogundele, who spoke through his deputy, Kaede Bamboshe, expressed optimism, saying that the Independent National Electoral Commission, in quote, became a willing tool in the hands of APC, end of quote. INEC on Sunday declared Governor Dakpo Abiodun as the winner of the election, scoring 276,298.
To deserve treatment like this, are we not taxpayers? Do we not deserve to be treated right? Is this process not meant to be transparent and fair to all? Then we kept on begging INEC. Treat us fairly. In Kebbi, the winning margin was 45,000. Yet you called for a rerun. In Ogun State, the winning margin is 13,000. Yet you refuse to rerun. God shall judge them. Yeah.
We are hereby calling on the national chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, to reverse this clear manipulation, injustice, and rape of democracy by the returning officer in Ogun State, by declaring the Ogun governorship election inconclusive and ordering a rerun in affected areas. We want to ensure our supporters and the people of Ogun State, whose victory, celebration, and freedom have been displayed, to be assured that we will do everything possible to right this injustice, and it shall never stand.
Joining us now on the show to discuss the election results so far is Bukola Idowu, Team Lead, Kimpact Development Initiatives, and Professor Bongo Adi, a Professor of Economics, Lagos Business School. Good morning and welcome to Nigeria Decides 2023.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Well, just one basic question to both of you, and I would like to start with you, Bukola Idowu, before we go to Professor Adi. Since 1999, the major objective confronting civil society and other stakeholders in this environment has been, how do we improve the electoral system in Nigeria to align it properly with the expectations of the people? Will you say that after about 7 elections, including this one, that Nigerians have learned any lessons? And if not, why? Let me start with you, Bukola Idowu.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abati. I think your question is just spot on, and one of the things I discovered is that some of us are not disappointed with the outcome and the process we are seeing now, because we expected it to happen. And when I say we expected it to happen, now I was doing a bit of research, and I went to the report of international observers from 1999, 2003, 2007. And then I compare it with what the preliminary report, press statement given by NDI, IRI, EU, and the rest, African Union, ECOWAS, and the rest, just in this this election. And I discover similarities. I discover that the recommendations are almost the same, which means we have not learned any lessons, which means nothing has changed. And again, while I say some of us are not disappointed, is because we cannot, I mean, all the indices that were there before, during the Maurice Iwu era, Gobadia era, 1999, 2003, 2007, and then 2011, are still there with us. And then we have refused to tactically and technically implement reforms report, committee report set up. We have refused to implement it to the letter. So what we have seen is pick aspect we like and then drop the one we don't like. I give you an example quickly. Number one, see, if Liverpool want to play, and then you now expect the president or the chairman of Liverpool to choose the referee. What exactly are we looking at in that kind of football game? What do we have today? The president, who is also a member of a political party, is the one choosing the INEC chairman, is the one choosing the national commissioner, is the one choosing the regs. Can we go back to Uwe's report and look at the recommendation we have there? So we need to begin to look at that. When you now begin to saturate INEC with people that are partisan lineage, and that is what we have seen just happening now. Again, what about infrastructure? The infrastructure are still the same. So what do you now expect? We expect a smooth logistic logistic flow, which is not going to work. So for me, Dr. Abati, I think until we are serious to see that we totally reform what we need to reform in total, to the letter, those reports that we have. We have two reports now, Waste report and the one, I think that Ken Inamani led report. What are we doing about them? We just pick an aspect and then we expect politicians to implement, which is not. And many times, if you look at the current electoral act, a lot of things are embedded in that electoral act that are very funny. And I wouldn't be surprised when people get to court and they find it difficult to prove their case.
Well, Professor Adi, have we learned any lessons?
Well, it is very clear that we haven't learned anything. You mentioned the civil society. I think that in modern democracies, the essential ingredients that makes things work, that actually keep people on their toes, is that active role of the civil society. And that's exactly what is missing in Nigeria. The society, by the way, is a reflection of the people, their mindset, their level of mental progress or advancement. Like the previous speaker said, if we check the indices from 1999, you will notice that Nigeria has actually been retrogressing. We've not made much progress. I mean, there were signs of progress from 1999, but after the initial burst, we've actually descended, on every measure of human development, not least education. Democracy is something that works when there is, widespread education, literate public. But in Nigeria, the level of illiteracy, and that is what I personally observed during this election, that people actually, most people are not able to actually make any distinction between one candidate or another, between one political party and another. And that is the reason why it is possible to, swear them, induce them financially or intimidate them. And then, so it was in 1996, I think Samuel Huntington, a sociologist, wrote the book, the popular book, The Clash of Civilization. And he argued that in the post-Cold War world, that the identities of people will be culture and religion that will define the social context. But in Nigeria today, what we have seen is not the clash of civilization. I think it is a clash of morals. And so where you have the good and the bad. Since 1999 as well, the military didn't leave a very good legacy. And it is still that legacy of the military, of winner takes it all, dictatorial tendencies that has pervading in our politics. Today it has come full swing, where you see this clash of values, clash of morals. Now, if you go around the election, from place to place, you notice this intimidation and people fighting and killing people and suppressing votes. It is simply, the clash of good and bad. It is not an ethnic clash. It's not anything about, region, one set of individuals against the other. because no matter any group you go to, you will see some people who support different parties. But what I notice here is that we have come full circle to this clash of morals, clash of values, which is what this democratic process we started in 1999 has actually given us. I don't know why it evolved this way, but that seems to be where we are trapped currently.
All right, Professor Adi, I'd like you to speak to, as we've looked at the elections, both presidential and now gubernatorial elections, and how foreign observers, analysts have observed that it's been marred with irregularities, violence in some parts, and the economic impact of elections like this, divisive elections like this in Nigeria, in terms of foreign perception, foreign investment, investors who would like to, especially in the retail space. There's an article earlier today in Business Day just analyzing the effect of these irregularities on perceptions and ultimately investments. I'd like you to speak to that in terms of the economic impact of a divisive election such as this. And for Bukolaido, I'd like you to respond to Professor Adi's comments around the role that CSOs play in elections in Nigeria. How well do you think CSOs did in this particular election cycle? I'll start with Professor Adi, please.
Yes, the economy is actually a product of perception, of sentiments, how people perceive, the rational expectation. So when you have these widespread irregularities, which point to the kind of culture that we have, because it's the role of values. In modern economy, advanced economies all over the world, what you notice is what we call generalized morality. Now, what is generalized morality? Which is the general trust in the economy that people will keep to their word. Okay, so that is what forms expectation. So once people expect that, okay, when they do a business with you, there is a tendency that you will default, you will not honor your word. They will not likely want to deal with you. So what has happened here is that we have given a signal to the rest of the world that we are not people of principles, we don't keep to our words. There is no such thing as generalized morality in Nigeria, so we haven't quite gotten to that liberal democratic principles. Don't forget that the neoclassical economics that we practice, or that we claim to practice, is a correlate of the liberal democratic principles. So without having a strong democratic institution, it is not possible for the economy, especially defined in modern neoclassical terms, to really work. The market system, liberal market economy, that is what it is called. The laissez-faireism, let them do. That's what laissez-faire means. So people cannot do when you haven't allowed people to exercise their basic franchise. Is it then, the economic things, activities that you would allow people to really do? So you see that we now have a very distorted politics. The same distortion has been carried over to our economics. And that's actually the Achilles heel of our economy over the years. Some people argue that Nigeria's economy has been eaten as a lunch by its politics. So that is actually the situation. So when we have this sort of sham of an election, where we manifest to the rest of the world who we truly are, that we do not have values, we do not have principles, we do not respect any law and order, we have these dictatorial tendencies, we do not, keep to contracts. Like INEC chairman and the rest of his crew, we do not keep to our words. So nobody will take us seriously as economic agents. And then capital is a coward. So once investors, reckon that they are not likely to, when they put money in the economy, they were not likely to get it back. I don't think that is a strong incentive for them to do business with such people, because it's not just about the economy. We're talking about people here.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Adi. To Mr. Idowu, please respond to Professor Adi's statement around the strength of CSOs and the role they played in this election cycle. How well do you think CSOs impacted this election cycle?
I think the CSO have done a lot and pretty well. And let's first of all look at the role of the CSO and that of the media. Now, if not because of the two, and don't forget that both the media and the CSO do not have constitutional role in this election aside to observe and to report. Just imagine that the media is not reporting. Many people will not be aware of what is going on today. Now, just imagine the report of the civil society are not out there. Many people, we will have been relying on the report of whatever INEC is telling us, or the political parties are telling us. And you now find out that the CSO have done a lot to promote and to strengthen the democratic culture of the country. And I give you an example again. Number one, when you look at the amount of resources the civil society are pushed into this election, and not only this election, from 1999 is enormous in terms of human resources, in terms of financial resources, material resources. No, so, for instance, in this election, over 10,000 observers were deployed by various CSOs, and many of them were paid not from the government money, from the money the civil society were able to secure themselves. And that is one of the reasons why they are able to say this is going on in Rivers, this is going on in Lagos, this is going on in Kebbi, this is going on in Kaduna, and civil society were able to pull that. Now, we set up situation room. We saw civil society observers being harassed on election day. Some of them, their phones were taken because you don't want them to take picture. You don't want them to report. Let's put that one aside. What of the reforms? Don't forget, civil society rose up and said, look, you cannot appoint people with partisan lineage into INEC. If not because civil society rose up, someone like is it Oreta or something? I mean, the name I can't. Onoshe.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Will have been a national commissioner today, because the civil society rose up, protested, sent petition, did a lot in that regard. We also raised concern about a lot of the regs that are partisan lineage, and that is why I said we are not surprised of what we are seeing today, because we have won. Again, let's look at in terms of peace initiative. Do we know that Peace Committee today is an initiative of the civil society? The National Peace Committee is an initiative of the peace, of the civil society. Again, what about the support we have given INEC? And that is why many of us are disappointed. We went about calling people to come out and vote, reinforcing confidence in people to come out and vote. And what did we have? We went through the nuke and training of the states, different states, calling. In fact, some of us went outside the country, raising international profile for the election. What do we have today? And I think we are doing a lot in Nigeria. But one of the things we have seen is that whatever we are doing is just like somebody using baskets to fetch water. No matter how you increase the flow of water into that basket, we are still wasting our time. And that is why we are asking for structural reforms, so that some of the initiative and the reforms we are pushing for can make meaning. People don't even know that the Brave Ballot was an initiative of the civil society, designed by the civil society for INEC. And that is one of the things. Civil society has done a lot. There are even some things I can't be mentioning on here that civil society have done. Many of us have trained INEC staff, work with INEC staff in terms of PVC collection. Many of us have worked with security agency. I know my organization, again, also work, and bringing out all sports. I said, look at Lagos, you have to look at this. Most of our institutions throw most of these things into trash can. INEC will throw it into trash can. Security agencies will throw it into a trash can. And here we are today. And whether we like it or not, the Nigerian state is the one losing. Like the prof said, in terms of credibility. If you cannot keep to our word, if you cannot have a smooth electoral process, how do you want investors to come in? And these are the things we need to begin to critically look into.
Right. Thank you so much for that. But I'd like to still raise some very pertinent matters. And I'll come to you first, Mr. Adowu, on this. This declaration of inconclusive elections. I mean, if you see the tape we played just now, we talked about Ogun, Adamawa. In fact, concerns have been raised about possibility of trying to influence the result in certain ways in Abia. And people are beginning to call on the fact that there's a certain person of the Labour Party leading, all of a sudden Obingwa has become a dispute. Also the case in Enugu, which some people are saying they've got strong indications that people might try to influence the result. But we see the pattern of inconclusive. It was as though a case of pick and choose. Some states with a very small margin was called, while some was declared inconclusive. And you wonder, what is sauce for the goose? Is it really sauce for the gander in this country? That's one question for you. Secondly, I'll talk to you, Prof, and I'm sure you want to sound off on this pick and choose conundrum going on there. Another one will be as regards the lasting image of Nigeria. We had elections, the presidential elections, that battered the image of Nigeria. The Economist, Financial Times, which most of the elites in the Western world read. Because out of the over 36, 37 million circulation of newspapers like The Economist and the Financial Times, you can see that the bulk of the elites in the Western world read this. And they have all called our elections a sham. They said the system was flawed, it's not fit for purpose. They've denigrated the people that finally became, candidates that emerged in that election. And you wonder that international image is what even brings business in the first place. So what do we do about this, our image that is battered and that was only consolidated in this governorship election? So those two questions. Saidowu, you go first. Then I know you want to chew on both as regards the image and the question as regards this pick and choose that we're now doing with inconclusive elections. Mr. Adowu, your take on this?
So the inconclusive election is, to have an inconclusive election is not alien to the Electoral Act. Let's first of all put that one, establish that. You have an inconclusive election when the margin of lead, when you discover that the margin of lead, if you had let's assume the margin of lead is 30,000. Number of cancelled votes and every other vote is just like about 40,000, which means if you had 40,000 to 30,000, it can still upturn the results. So INEC is mandated according to the Electoral Act to declare the election inconclusive and then redo it. For instance, if you cancel an election in a particular local government and you see the total number of registered voter in that local government and PVC collected in that local government, we actually have an impact on the election result. Then you declare it inconclusive and then you come back to conduct that election. However, this is my point. Some of the inconclusive we have today are needless because you have a rigged process. They have to take it to that level just to declare someone, and then you now say, hey, go to court and slug it out. That is number one. Number two, if you have respect the sanctity of IREF and say, hey, this is what we are seeing on IREF, and then it stays that way. But when you now begin to see a figure on IREF and you begin to see alteration at the collation center, you have taken us back to 2003. You have taken us back to the days when election is still being holding and then declaration is made somewhere. And this is what some of the things we have seen here. We have seen pressures on people not to declare. And this is not something we should be having at this point in time. We thought the IREV is going to be a game changer. But you now begin to see the umpire jettison the IREV and say, look, this, what you have on IREV is, I mean, you decide not to follow it. Where are we? Meanwhile, that's supposed to even be an authentic, because the picture is taken directly from the polling unit and uploaded on the IREV. So people can collate and see the transparency around the election. So if you ask me, some of the inconclusive we have, they are practically needless. If the process have been followed, if the process have not been flawed, and I keep saying it, people don't know that intimidation, harassment, ballot box snatching, election material destruction, late commencement of polls is another form of rigging. People don't know, because you do this in your opponent's stronghold to reduce the vote, because the vote will not count for you, will not count for me. But what I have been able to do is to reduce that vote. And we need to begin to look at our electoral act. And let me shock you, and let me shock Nigerians, if they don't know, violence, intimidation of INEC officials or voter, they are not part of the ground at which you can approach the tribunal to seek redress in an election. People don't know. Read the Electoral Act. It is not part of it. So you can't go to the tribunal and say, look, this election, this is widespread violence. How do you prove that? So we need total reforms. Now we have seen that the much celebrated Electoral Act, in quotes, still need a lot to be done. And in terms of credibility, let me stop there. See, we are, I mean, the social capital this is costing us is a lot. And again, one of the things we need to understand is there is no way we are not going to suffer from this in terms of social capital, in terms of legitimacy of the presidency. Whether you like it or not, most of the governors, most of the presidency, that government is going to battle with a lot of legitimacy for the next 1 year. And they may have to wait for the Supreme Court to validate or invalidate before we begin to talk about legitimacy. And when legitimacy is being put into question, then we are dealing with a lot of things on our hands.
Professor Odi, let's come to you. Prof.
All right, thank you very much. I think I have to agree when it comes to the process, because talking about the inconclusive elections that INEC is declaring here and there, what one makes of it is simply, you have a flawed process, or when you refuse to follow the process that you had established. I don't know when last you went to the hospital. There were times, those days you go to hospital, the nurses will be, handling big files and folders, or, patient, case files. Today, almost every hospital, has eliminated that. So you go into the consulting room, the doctor interviews you, you talk with him, whatever he's going to do, he sends it, you don't see anything, there's no movement of papers, you go to the lab, the lab attendant will access your record there on the computer, what the doctor has prescribed, the test and everything. So you see that seamless operation. The same thing with the bank, people have been talking about that. I think we've spoken about that at nauseam, about technology. today, you know, we're talking about GPT-4, Chat GPT and all of that. And here in Nigeria, we're still talking about manual ballots and all of that. So you see, the process was kept that way because there was that intention ab initio to not respect it, to not use it, and actually to really thwart the entire process. So that's just it. If we're really serious, there shouldn't be any reason for such a thing as inconclusive, because everything will be clear, you know, on the portal. She mentioned the IREV, so INEC deceived everybody. So with the beavers, with IREV, so we thought everything, yeah, this is the age of technology. The young population, everybody, all of us play with technology. So we understand these things. So once they, you know, put it forward, we thought everything is going to be okay. So we no longer, you know, could exercise the due diligence necessary because we thought that technology would take care of everything. Well, unknown to us, INEC was selling us a dummy, and we discovered that, you know, when it was too late. So when you, again, there's something about technology. I deal a lot with the public sector, you know, public sector governance, transparency, accountability. I teach for ICANN, you know, on a number of their programs with public sector people. Now, if you also notice that in the public space, they have actually digitalized so many of their processes. But the challenge is that they also, those processes, the technology is there, everything is there, but the softwares are all there installed on all their systems, and they have all this. But you notice one thing, they never use them. They don't input their activities in those systems. Why? Because they don't want to be tracked, because there is always that intention to do something that is not right. So they don't use the technology. Now, when the human being decides not to interact with the technology, what do? So we have really a very big problem here, which connects the first and the second question that you asked about the image. See, we have an embedded system. There's this Nigerian, one of the most famous Nigerian political scientists, Peter Eke. I don't know if you've ever read any of his work. He wrote in those days, in the 70s, his theory, the two publics. So he says that in Nigeria we have the civil public and then we have the traditional public. Now, people always will refer to one or use either, you know, play one against the other when it is convenient for them. So when you come to, for instance, let me take the case of Lagos election. So they have to descend to primordial sentiments because they wanted to suppress votes, because they are rooting for one particular candidate. Again, this is the clash that I was talking about of culture, the clash of civilizations, or whatever you call it. Then you go to other places, people will now use the civil one, that is the power from Abuja, you know, to suppress the local system, you know, their indigenous systems and all of that. So at each time you see this, you know, interplay of these two publics, the traditional and, well, the so-called civil, which is the imported one. So we have not managed to really form a seamless link between these two. And then because of that, the laws you make in the civil, people will go to their traditional to avert them. The ones you make in the traditional system, the indigenous systems, they will use the civil, maybe the laws, to avert them. So at each point in time, there are no consequences because there is always escape routes. You know, so that is the challenge that we have here, this embedded system, embeddedness. Now, how do we break this down? And that's a problem. So, you know, just imagine a metropolitan state such as Lagos still today is dealing with such issues. Now, you won't have such a thing in the states like New York or other parts of the world. And these are the states or the cities that we are trying to emulate. There was a time in the history of this Lagos, they were talking about Lagos mega city competitiveness, and they were trying to rank themselves, you know, with the most advanced cities in the world. I actually led that program at the Lagos Business School. And then how do I reconcile that project, you know, ambitious project that led by the Fashola administration, and what is currently ongoing, not just in Lagos, all over the country. So you see this embeddedness thesis that it has really wreaked havoc on our system. Now, so the problem is not about technology. You can deploy the best technologies, but people will refuse to use them, and there is nothing anybody can do about that. And then you have institutions. Institutions may be, you know, invested with all the powers in the world, but if the manpower, the people okay, who are responsible, who are in charge of such institutions, refuse not to abide by the principles, refuse to play by the rules, there is nothing anybody can do. So the challenge we have with Nigeria is, how do we get people to obey? How do we get people to comply? Unlike in other parts of the world, people play by the rules. What is institutions, by the way? I think North, one of the the founders of modern institutional economics, said that institution is simply rules of the game. You make rules, but people who have to play by the rules. If they don't play by the rules are of no effect, and then you will not achieve your target. You will not achieve the objectives. Because rules, institutions are set to direct some people, align incentives, so that you can have both economic benefit and as well as social, political benefits. But when these incentives are not aligned because people are not playing by the rules, then there is nothing that can be done. So we have a fundamental problem in our society that we need to deal with. And that's why civil society can't do much. People are always seeking escape. There is always escape routes, either in the traditional system or in the civil system. Even that also, judiciary is also of little effect. So when you think about the complex nature of Nigeria's socio-political system, you begin to wonder whether the way we practice democracy is really suitable for us. And then beyond that, again, the election process, villages conduct elections, kindreds conduct elections, and they go smoothly. All right? So do we really need INEC as such? Why can't we find a way that will help us, to manage all these discrepancies that is causing us all manner of embarrassment?
Well, Professor Adi, thank you very much for joining us on Nigeria Decides 2023. Thank you also, Bukola Idowu, for being with us and sharing your views.